All right, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today, I have Chief LeDuc from Scottsdale PD. He has 35 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief LeDuc. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm excited. Anytime I can talk to someone who represents my home state, I'm really excited. So, thank you. We were just talking offline, and I've only had a handful from Arizona, so it's really exciting to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Give us a little bit of background. So 35 years, does time fly when you're having fun, or has it felt like it's been 35 years?
Time flies when you're having fun. I actually say this to the new recruits every time. I feel sometimes like I've never worked a day in my life. When you really have a passion for what you're doing and you're connected to that purpose, it just flew by. And I was very fortunate the other day to be able to go out on the street to show a council member around, and I forgot how much I missed it. I missed being on the street and riding around. Now I'm not really allowed to do anything else. I get everybody nervous out there. You do a traffic stop, and other chiefs know this, and 100 people will show up and want to back you up. But uh, yeah, it's truly a calling, and it just flew by. Every aspect of the job that I've had have been fortunate to actually experience has just been wonderful. So I feel like it flew by. I can't believe it's been 35 years. I can't believe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you. You said you missed some of it. Do you feel like maybe words of advice for the younger people is to like slow down and enjoy it a little
Enjoy
bit
it.
because it
Yeah,
does fly by?
100%.
Yeah.
I almost, when I'm talking to new people that start, I always say, hey, you really, or if they come from a sports background, I was like, this is really akin to that, where you're working with a team
Mhm.
of people to achieve a mission or do something towards our mission, which is public safety. But it's a team sport and it's exciting. You're setting up perimeters because a bad guy has run into a field, or somebody runs from a traffic stop, and now you have to coordinate a response to that, or there's in progress crimes that you're trying to answer or whatnot. So um, it's a lot of fun, but it is definitely a very sporting type thing on one hand, and then the other hand, you get this opportunity to see people on their very worst day and make a difference,
Mm.
and that is extremely satisfying if you are built that way, if you connect with the purpose that way, which is who we hire people that really intrinsically they want to help people, and they get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So
Yeah.
it's you go from moments of just great exhilaration where you're meeting with your team to moments where you're really changing people's lives, and so who wouldn't like that? So
It's funny because when I look back on my life and some of the greatest points in my life, I feel like I was always in such a hurry to get to the next thing. I was like, I'll be successful if I reach this pinnacle, or I'll be happy if I get here. And I look back at some of those early days in my career and I'm like, man, why didn't I just enjoy that for what it was and have faith in the fact that like I'll get there and I'll have opportunities to progress in my career and I'll have opportunities to promote and that'll all happen. And of course, like you want to work hard and you want to work towards your goals and you want to achieve things. But I think sometimes we miss some of the exciting and the best parts of our lives and we don't recognize it until it's in the rear view.
100%. You got to live in the moment more. So much of our time is consumed planning for the future or lamenting on the past. And that's such a great point, because it's live in the moment and find the little joys in actually the moment. Now, like you said, it's okay to have goals and say, eventually I want to get here and I'll do those things, whether it's a special assignment or whether it's promotion. I'll do those things that set that foundation, but let's not be in a hurry. Let's get there. I was lucky enough, and maybe I'm unusual, but I kind of recognized that right away in my career. I actually didn't even promote to a sergeant, which is a first line supervisor, for 12 years into my career, because I was having so much fun. I wanted to really enjoy what I was doing. So I did take the slow path and enjoyed every bit of everything that I did at the time. But I do see people are like, okay, I have to be promoted by my third year. I have to be in my special assignment by this fourth year. I have to be a record supervisor by 2 years. enjoy what you're doing, gather the experience, and it does nothing but help you. So no, that's such great advice for people starting out, is enjoy the moment. I tell my son that. He's not even in law enforcement, but he's always lamenting on the next thing. And I said, hey, you know what? Today, just go out and grab a cup of coffee from Starbucks and enjoy that coffee.
Yep.
And sometimes that's what you have to do, is just live in the moment. So that's great
Yeah.
advice.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to have those conversations with recruits, because you'll see them at different points, throughout the academy. In the beginning, they're like scared. And then, in the middle, like you start to see like, they're a little bit more excited, but they're also stressed. And at the end, it's like senioritis, right? They're ready to go. And, I've had conversations with them before where I say that I'm like, hey, like, I know you guys are moving on, but like, take a
Yeah,
look around for a second, like
yeah,
this is the last time, because a lot of academies are regional, right? So it's the last time you guys are all going to be in the same room together. It's the last time you're going to be this young, this new, this excited, like take that moment. And everything that you just said, and you said it earlier too. So I want to kind of circle back, but you
mhm,
have this mindset of gratitude and presence. And it seems to me like having that mindset has helped you to have a long and successful career where you've been able to stay positive, even though I imagine there have been some incredibly stressful and traumatic points in your career. But for you now, 35 years later, to be having a conversation and all you can say is the positive and how much you've loved it, that's wellness, And so I definitely want to talk a little bit about how you've been able to maintain that mindset over the last 35 years. And is that something that you teach? Is that something that you talk about within your organization? Because I know wellness is something that's important to you and something that you guys are really prioritizing.
yeah, big time. First of all, just to kind of touch on the first part of that, you actually, as you mature in your career, you start to realize that not everything is such a big deal. My
Mm,
mother once told me, when I was really worried about something one time, I was stressing about probably something internal, because that's usually the biggest source of our stress. She's like, how many times has the worst scenario actually happened, Joe? And
mhm,
I'm like, almost never. But we worry about the worst scenario.
mhm.
And so when you start to really realize that you're fretting or worrying about things that usually aren't going to come to fruition, it's so relaxing. It's just so therapeutic in that way. So that is a good point of advice: is don't worry about everything, because it usually works out okay. I was out to lunch yesterday, and the folks that I was with, there are other leaders within the city. They're actually deputy city managers, and they asked me the same question. They're like, you've just had a heck of a week. We had two officer involved shootings over the last couple of weeks. We've had, you know, short-term rental shootings and everything else. I was like, how are you smiling? And I said, because I'm having a delicious lunch right now. And, we get to share stories. You have to compartmentalize. You have to take those things in stride. And you work through the problem. And I think, a good friend of mine said one time, when during a very stressful time in 2020, when we were dealing with civil unrest and everything, take one problem, solve it, and then focus on the next problem. And that's that whole idea of compartmentalization.
Yeah.
And so, first thing, officer involved shooting, let's make sure our officer is okay. Let's make sure the community is okay. The rest is a process. We're going to work through it, no matter what it is. And that's what we're doing. So, you know what? I'm going to enjoy the delicious omelet that I had that day.
I
and
love that.
and we're working through it, but enjoy the moments as well. So, um, yeah, I think that's very important. But that's how you stay positive, and a lot of it is positivity and attitude. We create our own weather so many times. I remember talking to some first line supervisors, and they say, during briefing, that's when we allow them to vent. They can come in and complain about everything. And I'm like, what a horrible way to start your day,
Mm,
because you choose your attitude. You can choose to come into that setting and look at things positively, because it's not necessarily helpful to vent in that kind of because that's negative thinking. Why not switch it to positive thinking? And I'm not saying that, yeah, there's negative things and it's not therapeutic to talk about, negativity once in a while, but it's really time and place. And I think if any other law enforcement leaders are watching this, we all know something in law enforcement, and that's, if you're not at lunch, you're on the menu. We love to gossip and be negative about things. Maybe it's because we see the most negative things in the world, But wow, if you can change that and just change that perspective, what a wonderful organization we would have. But I talked a little bit about foundational behaviors, and I know a lot of organizations, they have values that turn into kind of like platitudes on a wall: excellence, initiative, and integrity. Well, what does that really mean? They're words, and they just become white noise to a lot of our employees. And so what we did a few years ago is we adopted 26 foundational behaviors that actually mean something. And so, for example, one might be um, assume positive intent.
Mm.
You know how we always never assume that somebody, if we just took a moment and said, you know what, that might not be the story. Let's assume positive intent, or be relentless about improvement, or show caring and compassion.
Mm.
Those are more than words or just stickers on a car. They actually mean something. And then every 2 weeks, we actually have an employee film what that foundational behavior means to them, not scripted. And whatever it means to them, not what it means to me or what our definition is. They actually says what that foundational behavior means to them, and then we blast that out through the organization. And it's not the chiefs doing the tell; it's a line level employee saying, "Hey, showing care and compassion. This is what it means to me." And this is an example of the last time I used that or felt that way. I think that goes a long way into kind of setting culture
Yeah.
and positivity. So that's helped us a lot. I always say we have a recipe. It's hire the right people. We train them well. We equip them well. We expect them to be excellent and be accountable. And then the biggest thing is to every day and in every way maintain trust with the community and foster that trust. And I'm like an accolade manager here of when people actually interact with our police officers, 95% of the time, they're telling me what a great experience that is. That's culture. And
Yeah.
so when we talk about wellness and everything, I guess, you know how you've heard that phrase, hurt people hurt people. Healthy people and people that are well are able to really affect people that way, in that positive way.
Mm.
So I love that you centered on that positivity right away, because I really think that's the foundation of everything. Because you can choose to think negative or you can choose to think positive. Sometimes it's hard, but it's a habit.
Yeah.
So
Wow, there's so many things that I want to kind of circle back to. So thank you for that. But exactly what you said, and I've talked about this on the podcast before because it was such a aha light bulb moment for me. I'm in this space and I talk about this stuff all the time, mental training and, how do we put things into action instead of just talking about it or making it fluffy? How do we actually implement these things? And I was sitting on my staircase at home and I was complaining to my fiance, my partner. I was like, I don't remember what I was saying. I was like, this is bad and this is bad and, whatever. And he looked at me and he goes, hey, babe, like, I know that this isn't the best. Like, I know that, this is stressful for you, but you're kind of not responding very well right now. And he's like, and the one thing that you can control is how you respond. You can't control all that other stuff, but you can control your actions and your reactions. And you're not really responding very well right now. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, And I think that sometimes we need to be held accountable for some of those things, and have people in our corner that are willing to, you know, share that because it is a ripple effect. If
sure
I
is.
go around spreading negativity and toxicity and I'm complaining about everything, that's going to rub off on other people, right? It's going to have a ripple effect for the people around me. And unfortunately, usually it's the people who are closest to you that get impacted the most.
100%.
But the reverse, to your point, is also true. If we walk around and we see sunshine and we're talking about the positive things and your omelet and that coffee and like all the things, other people are going to want to be that way too because it's contagious. And so I
100%.
love that you talked about that because I am 100% on board and it's not easy. We're going to catch ourselves sometimes where we're like, man, like I kind of said something negative right there, or man, maybe I'm not seeing this in the best way that I possibly can, or ask ourselves a question: is there a different way to see this? And I love that you said that there are 26 foundational behaviors, and the one thing that I wrote down was that you're creating habits. The more that we can implement these things through action and we can show what that actually means rather than just talking about it. I actually saw something, it was a quote, and it said, um, it was education without action is just a meeting. And
Oh,
I really
right.
liked that because it's like, yeah, like what are we here for? Like, are we
Yeah.
here to just talk about stuff, or are we here to like actually enforce or encourage change, and positive change? And so I love that you've broken that down into what do those behaviors look like? How can we create a foundation of action and create healthier habits within the organization? And then to your point, this is the last thing I'll say. I think the stat was over 80% of what you think will happen doesn't happen. It
That's a
was like
great
it was
stat
like it
because
was
I've
like
heard
over, I think
that.
I've heard it was like over 80%. So
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's a
true.
wake up call, right? It's like
Yeah.
how much time do we waste
Yeah.
worrying about stuff that never happens? 80% of our time is wasted
Yeah.
on things that
Doing
never
that.
happen. Yeah.
So true. And it really shows how important it is that positive leadership goes a long way.
Mhm.
And um, you know, being a leader that's confident and calm and not tolerating the negativity or the negative behavior or the gossip, because I heard a phrase, and it joins very well with your phrase. It's called, what you tolerate, you advocate.
Mm.
Because so even being silent is, you're advocating for it, you tolerated it. And so I always say, leadership is a verb, it's not a noun. You have a responsibility to intervene and to set that example. And you're so right about positivity being contagious. It's almost like, if you thought right now, who do I want to go have dinner with? It's not going to be the negative Nelly. It's going to be that person, that sunshine, and whatnot. I love the story about you sitting on the stroll, because we do sometimes need our partners to pull us away from that different perspective. And at the police department, we have two things: we have the mentoring program and peer support. And we really are watching people who are starting to, we have a lot of early warning systems set up, and maybe somebody's getting some complaints because of rudeness, or we just notice somebody's not well. And so we have these peer support folks that are trained throughout the organization, and they've done it to me, and they come up to you and they just put their arm around you, like, hey, how are you doing? Now, what do we normally reply? We're like, oh, great, I'm fine.
Fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But then they stop and they say, no, really, how are you doing? And have the conversation. But that's kind of like what your partner did, is like, wait a second, let me offer you a different perspective. And my wife is very much like that as well. She's extremely positive and in a lot of things. And she always says, did you ever look at it this way? And I'm like, no, I didn't, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that other viewpoint. So we rely on people just like our partners. We rely on, we want our employees to rely on each other, and that's what the peer support really comes in that way, are folks that are really those informal leaders in the organization,
Mm.
that are those cheerful people. Those are the ones you say, hey, I want you to be peer support. I love your energy. We call it, you have
Yeah.
great energy. And so those are the people we also hire them into our wellness unit. We have dedicated employees that's all they do, is go out and champion wellness programs.
Well, and arguably you spend more time with your coworkers sometimes than you do with your friends or family, right? And so it's even more important to, encourage a culture of care and kindness and positivity. And you can control your circle to a certain extent,
Yeah.
right? And at work, sometimes you can't always control that full circle, right? But if as an organization you're focusing on culture and care and kindness and looking for those warning signs and showing up for people and asking the questions, then you're creating more of that circle where people are going to hold each other accountable and they are going to offer different perspectives and more positivity, and you're training that. But it's really hard. And a lot of chiefs I talk to, they struggle with culture being really toxic, really broken. And I've had a number of officers talk to me just like off the record, and just being like, Paige, like I've seen every horrible thing that you can possibly see out on the streets. And I've never been so stressed than I have been with internal stressors and the things that happen in the culture. And so I would almost argue, and you can tell me how you feel, because I know you guys have a robust wellness program that you've built out, but I would almost argue that culture is the first foundation that has to happen, and you can't really build on a broken foundation. You can't really add all of this wellness stuff if you don't first have that culture of care.
Yeah, it's a great point, and you have to, of course, fixing that, so people listen. But it's all part of it. It's like if you have an aircraft carrier, you can't turn it around in a second. It takes a while to turn a large aircraft carrier around, and so in an organization, it takes a while to do things. And I think my best advice to leadership is don't underestimate even the little things that you're doing to improve your culture, because they make a difference. You may not see instant results, but those results grow.
Mm.
And it's worth the input. Like that recipe I told you, where you hire the right people, ask ourselves, are we asking the right question? Are we really focused on hiring, let's say, for a sworn police officer? We ask them a lot of questions about conflict resolution and whether or not they use deadly force and everything else. But when was the last time we really kind of focused in on attitude or values? And so are we hiring the right people that may have a positive and natural positive disposition? Because those are the people. So it starts right there. And then it's what programs and systems and processes, and what are you culturing your leaders and your field training officers or your trainers within the organization? Because you're both talking about professional staff and sworn. Do you want your negative Nellies to be the trainers? No, they have the most impact. You want those to be your natural leaders that are positive and really know how to work with people. So it's those decisions that change culture. So never underestimate the importance of those decisions that slowly change culture around time. Now, hey, we're at a water level. Our water level is negativity. I mean, because we see it all the time. And to your point, people are broken on the inside, or they get frustrated because they did something. They made a decision, and it tears people apart, especially when they don't know. So everybody quotes Simon Sinek, you got to know the why, and everything else. And that it's almost become cliche, but there's things that we can do to connect people more with the know. What I hear all the time from people who come to headquarters to work internal affairs, they're the sergeant level. They go, wow, we didn't know, we didn't know. We didn't know how much command staff laments on doling out punishment, for example. They just think we sit on high and we're like, suspend them. And that's just not the truth. I tell this to our folks all the time. I'm like, okay, well, you come up with an idea. And we love ideas. I have a program called Ask the Chief, and you can anonymously ask the chief questions and give us ideas. And we talk about them and we try and implement them. And why that's so important is because employees need to feel valued and heard. And you know what? We should hear and value our employees. It's not just a program. That's the right thing to do when you talk about servant leadership. You're here to serve them. And especially with these new generations, they want to be heard and seen. So I always say, okay, well, you come up with an idea, and let's say this is the idea. It's a cell phone. Okay, well, this is a cool case. I like this. This is really neat. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is a cool design. I like your idea. But then what they may not realize is that I have my legal advisor, I have my boss, which is a city manager. Everybody thinks I'm the boss. No, I have a boss. I have the city council. I have the posts qualifications. I have legislature, human resources. I have all of these, and they look at it and then they're like, yeah, maybe you got to do that. And I'm like, well, that wasn't the idea. That's different. But can I do this? Well, maybe that would be fine. But then the city manager comes in and says, I really like that. I'm like, come on, boss. How about just closer to that? And this is what I end up with. See, it's just a little bit different there, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to the employee. The employee's like, what the heck? They never want to listen to me, but they don't understand our perspective and what we go through. So it's incumbent upon us to explain those processes. I started a mentoring program now here where every sergeant is required to spend a few days up at headquarters attending our staff meetings and talking to us and actually seeing firsthand how decisions are made. So when they go back to their briefings, these first line supervisors or their work units, they may be able to offer some more perspective. But at the same time, I'm getting perspective from them because I'm disconnected. I'm not doing every Saturday night. I don't have the time. And so we have a very candid conversation as part of their time up here that says, what's going on the road? What do I need to know? What keeps you up at night? What's bothering you internally? And then we have that exchange. There's so many things through Ask the Chief in those conversations that I realize that we need to talk about. Maybe I can't change it, but I can communicate it better
Yeah.
and whatnot. So I think that's been a practice that has really helped our culture because people feel heard. We take ideas by the reins, and even though we can't maybe implement them at 100%, I explain why we can't, but we try
Mm.
being heard and feeling valued.
So transparency is something that is valuable. And to me, it sounds like you're saying you're creating a two-way street of conversation. Because we do, like, if you're allowing people to talk to you, but then you're not explaining the why, then I can see that. I can see how someone on the other end would come up with those conclusions. And then it goes back to what you said of, assume good intent,
Yeah, so,
or positive intent.
yeah, exactly.
Um, but not everyone does that, right? Everyone maybe will feel frustrated. So for you to open up those lines of communication to be like, hey, here's what we did. Here's why it's a little bit different, or here's why we can or cannot do these things, then it helps everyone to understand each other. And that's the basis of any sort of effective communication. And you mentioned a couple times, and I do want to talk about this before we run out of time. And I feel like we could talk forever, but you said servant leadership.
Mhm.
You teach servant leadership all across the country. This is something that you have a lot of experience in, and you've already mentioned a few things, throughout our conversation that apply to what servant leadership is. But can you give like an overarching definition of what servant leadership is, and how can you maybe train those qualities to be an effective leader?
Absolutely. Servant leadership first is putting the employee's needs and professional development ahead of your own. And I can almost say it's better to say what it's not, because people, when they hear servant leadership, they're like, oh, you're just going to give them whatever they want. The inmates are running the prison, and whatnot. And it can't be further from the truth. Servant leadership is not advocate leadership, because sometimes servant leadership means putting somebody on the right track, and there's an accountability piece there. And I always say it's akin to parenting almost. It's like if your child does something dangerous, there's going to be a correction. You know, don't touch that hot stove, don't eat that or whatever it is. And so it's the same thing. There's accountability with it, but there's a big difference in how you approach your employees. And I'll go back to when I started in 1991. We showed up, and it was the staff that told us what to do, and we just did it. It was yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, whatever you need. And now it's different. This generation is not like that. And I know that the newer generations, everybody likes to complain about older generations, newer generations. This generation is amazing because they're so connected in a way to work-life balance. And we really struggled with that growing up in the organization. I struggled with that, where your work becomes your whole world. But servant leaders focus on the needs of their employees, and understand not only in their professional time how they need to grow and be heard and valued, and their accomplishments are their accomplishments. You are behind your team, pushing them forward towards their goals. And then on a personal level, you respect their desire to have a balanced life. And you respect, if in 1991, when I started, there was no such thing as wellness.
Right.
Nobody paid attention to that. You walk it off. And now we're actually saying, hey, we respect your time off. We respect your family connection. We want you to have hobbies outside of here. It's healthy. We'll help you even build that. So servant leaders are very employee centric. They're very it's almost like a parenting style in a way, and then in the other way, it's putting people first. So how do you implement that across the board and into your culture? It's how you hire your leaders. It's how you progress your leaders. So I'll give you a great example of that. Mid-level managers, which we call lieutenants on professional staff, they're mid-level managers. When they come into an interview and they have to sit in front of the executive staff, and they come into an interview, we listen very carefully to the words they use. And we say, name a time that you did something that you're most proud of. Now, a default in an interview, everybody wants to say, I did this and I did that and I accomplished this. We wait. And the people who get the job are the ones that say, I put together an amazing team. And you know what they did? This is what they accomplished. It's not the I statements, it's the they statements.
Mm.
Or under my leadership, even, those are the people that we're promoting. The humble leader that cares deeply about their employees and puts them first to accomplish the tasks. That's servant leadership. But it has to be genuine as well. It's you have to we promoting people that genuinely care about other people within the organization. We went through a time period here, even at the command level, where, and I'm sure anybody that would in organizations can see this, where everybody's trying to crawl over each other's back to get to the next rank. I can tell in the last 4 years, 5 years, maybe even more, that culture is creeping in. For the first time in a long time, I see every single member of our command staff, for example, support each other, isn't trying to run over to get to the next ranch, to the next place. That's servant leadership. That's showing care for others even more than yourself. And again, the people I promote out of my command staff are the ones that are most humble, that have helped their peers and not tried to grandstand or jump over people. And you can see it. It's so apparent. That's what creates the culture. You hire and promote the people that are putting others first before themselves. There's a certain level of humility there, but that truly is the principle. And it's not look what I did. It's look what they did under my leadership. And I'm so proud of them.
I
So
love
grateful for them. People tell us all the time, it's if we get great accolades here. And we just had one that came, we're the top 5% safest cities in the nation for populations over 100,000. And another one came in. We did a community survey and it said, do you feel safe in Scottsdale? Do you feel safe here? The national average to that answer of people saying yes is only 40%. Our response for yes was 86%.
Yeah,
It's
I
huge
believe that.
because, yeah. And it's so I could easily, as a chief, have bragging rights for that. But I tell everybody who will listen, including my bosses, it's not me. It's every single person who works out there and is fighting crime and meeting somebody at the records window or answering the phone in dispatch that provides that connection that makes people feel safe. It's not me. It's the incredible teams that I have.
Yeah,
So that servant leadership is understanding the reality of that. And you got to get away from your own ego.
thank you.
So,
Yeah, you and I talked a little bit before we hit record on this, and I shared with you kind of a personal note that I live in Phoenix currently, expecting our first baby, and that was really influencing a lot of decisions that we were making. And we're now moving to Scottsdale because I told you I was like, I want to be able to feel really safe. I want to be able to walk, my baby carrier down the road or my stroller down the road and feel really good about it. And so that number actually doesn't surprise me because I am from here and I do
yeah.
know how safe Scottsdale is. And I've lived in Scottsdale before and I've always felt that way. But what a great
Mhm.
compliment, from everyone else to be able to say
Yeah.
that. And I have a saying that maybe on the surface is going to sound a little weird, but bear with me. I'll explain it here in a second. But I've always had this motto of give everyone everything and beat them anyway. And it sounds competitive and it sounds egotistical. I understand. But the point is, we should want everyone to win.
Yeah.
And we have all met those people who hold things close to their chest. They don't want to mentor, they don't want to give advice, they don't want other people to win, right? It's like that idea of like, I'm going to climb this mountain alone and I'm going to try to like push everyone down on the way up. And I've never believed in that. I think that I want to be around people who are
Mm.
great because
Yeah.
that inspires me to be great.
Yeah.
And I can still strive to be the best version of myself. And this is where it says, and beat them anyway, right? It's like, it has nothing to do with winning. It's this idea of like, it's not an either or.
Mhm.
You can want other people to win. You can give away all your secrets. You can train them. You could be their cheerleaders. You can do all of that.
Mhm.
And you can still strive to be the best version of yourself. You can still strive to get the promotions that you want and still apply for those things. It doesn't mean that because you are helping other people to win and you're like rising the tides, that means that you're drowning. And I think that people really, at least in the past, have always felt that way. And I've experienced that in my life. And I think we all have. We've all been around people where we're like, wow, like they only care about themselves winning and reaching the pinnacle of whatever it looks for them. So I think it's not an either or, it's an and. We can all win together, and arguably when you have people around you that are better than you, and
Mhm.
if you could be a piece of that, if you could be a mentor, I mean, how fulfilling is that? But if they're
Yeah.
better than you, that means like I'm continuing to raise my game too. And
Yes.
like you went back to like team environment, like you're as strong as your weakest link. How can we all be, helping each other to be great?
100%.
So I've
Rising
always
tide rises all ships. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I've always really liked that. And it's like, I love to see that you're seeing that right now with the younger generation. You're seeing a shift of people who like genuinely want each other to win because that's what it's about,
Really
right?
do.
And when we
Mhm.
talk about the why, especially with wellness, it's like, what is that why? Why are we doing these things? And the answer every time should be for the people. Like we want everyone to succeed. We want everyone to be happier, healthier, more successful. We want those things, especially when you're in that team environment and you have that shared mission. And so how do we start putting into actions those behaviors that are going to get us there? And so everything you're saying, I appreciate it because that's right on in line. And I thought it was funny that you said a jet airliner. I always used to call it the Titanic. Slow to burn, but we'll get
Yes.
there.
It's so you touched on something that I'm not even sure if you realize, but it really is such a definition of servant leadership. As you welcome your first child into the world, your perspective changes,
Mm,
and you are going to become the ultimate servant leader because all of your thoughts, all of your decisions now are going to be made with that special person in mind.
mhm,
Moving to Scottsdale, think about how you frame life now, and that's what servant leaderships need to do is they consider. And I'm not saying you're allowing decisions to be made just because somebody wants to. You're going to still make adult decisions. Their leadership is going to make good, solid decisions. But for the first time, you are going to be making decisions about someone super special to you.
mhm.
Every decision you make, where you go on vacation, when you go on vacation, what food you buy in the grocery store, where you live, how you drive, is now going to be different. And that's a servant leader. Everything you do has to be different. You have to look at that lens almost, and your life's about to change in a very good way.
Yeah,
So congrats, that's awesome.
like you can't keep going because you're catching me an emotional time and I'm gonna get all weepy eyed on you. But yeah. I know we're running close on time, so I do have just two final questions for you. For the other leaders, and you've already given some advice, but I have a lot of leaders who listen to this and they kind of struggle with, the question mark of like, how do we know what resources are good? How do we know where to spend our limited dollars? How do we even know where to start? Like what's a good jumping point? How do we find the money if we don't have it in our line item budget because things are getting cut left and right? And so for any leaders that are listening, what maybe words of advice would you give them when it comes to creating culture, creating wellness programming? What would your advice be for like where to even start or, how to be successful?
Such a great question because that is the hardest part. It's the first step into it. So I'd say there's two things. First of all, start with the people. We committed to creating a committee right away, a group of people right away that was almost like a steering committee to come up with the ideas. Now you can go and connect them with your vision, but we call it RAPS. It's a wellness, resilience, and peer support. And it's a group that's all they do is they're constantly looking to implement programs, seek programs out, find best practices. It's not there's resources and it's other leaders. It's calling me. I don't care where you are in the country and saying, hey, can I see your policy? Can I see your wellness 360 publication? Can you give me your program and I'll give it gladly. The second part of that is funding. We struggle with that. Every police department in the country struggles with funding, and a lot of programs like this truly fall away. First of all, there's a lot of things in a wellness program that can be done for free.
Mm,
And so those are things that we can get easy wins on just right away, just an easy win with that. But there's also, because there's so much more attention that is being paid to wellness, there's a lot of grants and alternative funding methods to find for officer wellness. And so I'd say take advantage of those alternative funding sources. I've got to be honest with you, we didn't have a line item we've been doing wellness now pretty significantly for the last probably 5, 6 years. Just this budget year did we get a line item for wellness.
Mm.
We were begging, borrowing, and looking for alternative sources to fund everything that we funded. And we finally have a line item for it. So it can be done, is what I'm saying. So you look at things like mentoring programs and peer support and um, creating wellness time in your schedule. Those are all things that have very big impact and that are relatively free. Publications, having volunteer chaplains come in. Then there's other things that cost money. They cost city money, like counseling services and creating a wellness unit, or what we have as crisis canines, which are amazing. They end up coming to all of our major events like shootings and things like that. Having a dog around is pretty amazing. Those cost money, but find alternative sources for them because it's not too much. Some organizations create foundations or have foundations, and there's actually a Department of Justice publication that talks about how you can create that and whatnot. So there are ways to do it. I'd say lean on your peers across your jurisdiction or outside the state to find the recipe, find kind of the blueprint, and everybody will share it. We do that, and just start somewhere. Because even though it seems like a daunting effort, start somewhere. Another thing that always gets in the way is I know a lot of leaders say, you know what, but then are we coddling? We need more grit and resilience in our people. And I don't argue with that. We do. I bring in training about grit and resilience. But we also have to understand there's a balance there. We're not all superhuman. Take the first step. It's a part of servant leadership, and it's a part of truly caring about your employees, and your happy, healthy employees will walk through walls to deliver your mission and treat people the right way. So it's worth every single effort. So I guess that would be the advice that I would give, or even call me. I'm here to help. So
I love it. Thank you. That's perfect. And then my final question is for the younger generation. So the younger men and women who are coming into this career that will be the future leaders of the organization one day. What words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger?
oh wow, that's so perfect question based on everything we just talked about. Is I remember being a young officer without any way to attach yourself to wellness. And it was a very, very slow boil to get people to destigmatize just the fact that you need help. So I think my advice to people coming on is keep that spirit that you had before you jumped into this profession, because I don't care what part of the agency or organization you're working in, there's a lot of negativity that comes with dealing with, you know, society's ills and people who are on their worst day. Is stay connected and don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to take advantage of everything you can in a wellness space, because it's not a sign of weakness. As a matter of fact, it's quite opposite. It's a sign of strength. It just shows that you have the courage to be able to admit that I can't take this all on. So I would say that would be number one, is nobody's expecting, hey, you have to be the hero. We hired leaders, we don't hire followers to run the 911 calls. But you don't have to wear the cape all the time. Understand that you're fallible, and you actually show more courage and strength by seeking help and looking to embrace that help. So I think that'd be the best advice for new people coming on.
Thank you. Thank you
Sure.
so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for sharing
Likewise.
all of your knowledge about leadership and everything that you're doing in wellness. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate being here.
Of course.